Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser, and today we have a new episode, and I'm really excited for this guest because she's been a part of a band out of the Gainesville, Florida area known as Atoms for Peace. They existed in the 80s, and Audrey Silverman played bass, but she's also a guitar player and a musician in general, educator, and she's here to tell the story of Atoms for Peace. Audrey, welcome in. How are you?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. So
Excited to be here.
we're going to get into a lot of great stuff today, talking about Atoms for Peace and your musical journey, because you've been doing it for a long time. So let's get started. Where did it all begin? Where'd you grow up in Florida?
I was born in Miami, if you can believe it. Not too many people were, but I was born at Cedars of Lebanon, which is no longer there. It's part of the Jackson Medical Complex now. And I grew up in, Coral Gables for the first few years. And then we moved to Kendall. And I went to Kenwood Elementary, Glades Middle, and Killian Senior. And I even went to Gainesville for college. So I was just Florida, all the way South Florida, but then North when I went to college.
Did you play music when you were growing up in school, like in high school?
Yes, I learned guitar when I was 7 years old. I had to, I was one of the, I always find it fascinating that kids now, a lot of times parents will tell them they're going to learn an instrument. You're going to learn piano, or we want you to learn guitar, or we're going to get you a set of drums so you can get started with music. But I literally had to beg my parents to let me learn guitar. They had no interest in really, I don't know. It just didn't seem like it was a big deal for them. Although my father really was a stereo buff, but he was not really as much of a music person as I am, but he loved stereo. Anyway, they didn't buy me a guitar. My cousin Jay gave me a guitar, and it was a classical guitar, but it was really beat up. I loved it though. I wish I still had it. I don't. And I started taking lessons in South Miami at a place called House of Melody. And I learned songs. And from that point on, I was, kind of an addict with guitar. I played for my fourth grade class. I'll never forget the song that I played and sang, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, if you can believe that, if you even know that song. It was like an anti-war song from the 60s. But then when I went into junior high, I started taking guitar picking lessons, and I had a different guitar teacher, and he was kind of a hippie. As a matter of fact, he looked just like Lindsey Buckingham. I had so much of a crush on him. I was like, Lindsey Buckingham is my guitar teacher. No, but he wasn't, but he looked like him. But the interesting thing about this guy is that he had really long fingernails on one side and not on the other. And if you'll notice, that's my fingernail pattern even to this day, because I still do pick with my guitar. That's what guitar pickers do. You can't have nails on your the pressing side, that where you play the chords, and the nails on the other hand help you if you're not using a pick, so I became a finger picking person, and I was really inspired by, I don't know, like people like James Taylor, some extent Joni Mitchell, some of the Beatles, like for example, In My Life, if you'll remember, there's a picking pattern in there. And I started, and Simon and Garfunkel were the probably one of the biggest influences of my guitar life. Paul Simon, I should say. I learned every song on the Sound of Silence album and Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme, and it became my thing. I was a folk picker, and I loved it until, and then I met a girl in one of my junior high school classes named Lori, who was very odd. This is back in 1978, and she was coloring her hair purple. And I didn't know anyone that was doing that in 78. Well, what am I talking about? Not in Florida, right? They were doing that in New York or in London. And I was like, who is this cool girl that has purple hair? So we became immediately best friends. And she learned how to play the drums. I taught her how to play guitar, But then I said, listen, you need to learn how to play something else so we can start a band. So she learned how to play drums and she bought a drum set. And we started a band. And that was in the 9th grade. We really didn't even have a name. It was just, I don't know, some band. But we really, Lori and we started writing songs together. And I'm still friends with her. But
did you ever play any local events of any kind?
We played parties because we were too young to go to bars or clubs. I didn't even know how to do anything like that. So we played like at our friends' parties. But really, we didn't have a steady band. It was just, she and I were the only steady members. And I never saw myself as a full-time singer ever. I liked playing guitar and having someone else sing, and I sing backup. So we went through, I don't even know, 3, 4, 5 different singers, and every month we were changing singers. And to this day, to be honest with you, that's been the plague of my musical existence, is finding somebody to sing for the multiple bands that I've tried to form. Because to me, that's the hardest part, is finding the right singer. That was that band, that first band that Lori and I started was just really kind of, it didn't really work out. And in high school, I met lots of different musicians, but they were mostly dudes, and I don't know. It was like I auditioned for some bands, and I know this is going to sound kind of arrogant, but the guys didn't like for the girl to play the guitar better than them. They didn't. They really didn't. Like, I remember guys being really upset with me in the middle of practices. Or auditions, and I'd be like, am I playing it wrong? What's wrong? They're like, no, it's fine. It's just, it never worked out. Like, I don't know. I said, should I play it differently? So anyway, I never really got into any bands that I auditioned for. And I kind of know that I nailed a lot of auditions, but I never got into any of the bands.
Do you remember any of those bands that you had auditioned for? Or
they
maybe
were all high school bands.
High school bands.
They were not, again, we were underage.
Yeah. What were some of the bands that were around that you were aware of from South Florida at that time period?
I was not allowed to go to bars or go out to see live music, so I didn't know any live bands in South Florida. I mean, I was just like, and the other thing is that I was kind of like a goody two-shoes. I was sort of like a good student, I was like really into school. So in some ways, I was not really the rebel rock and roller that people would want to see, because I was really into like literature and writing, and so I don't know. I had a lot of different kind of hats that I wore. My musical hat wasn't maybe wild enough for what some people would want, and then my academic hat, was important to me sometimes too. So when I went to college, this is when I started playing open mics by myself, and I played with just my guitar and me. And I played all around Gainesville. I mean, I don't remember the name of the coffee houses, but there were a lot of them all downtown. Gainesville's no longer like it was. So I went there in 1980 and I stayed till 85, the end of 85. Those were my years. And Gainesville it was happening. It really was. It was like blooming. Well, Tom Petty, was from there. There was, I don't remember the names of all the bands, but there was that Roach Motel, and there were different bands. Apricot, probably, they were a little bit later. And I met this guy named Lori who had a band. I have such a bad memory, but he had a band that were all keyboards. Even, I wish I could remember the name of it. Even their drummer did keyboard drums. It was like, they were like Kraftwerk. And this was in Gainesville. And I moved in with him for a little while. He was very inspirational to me, because I mean, that was when I was getting into things like Depeche Mode and New Order. And I mean, Martha and the Muffins. I don't know if you ever heard of them. And I mean, you probably have. Yeah,
of course.
I mean, there was some like I used to really like the Motels. in the, you know, like 79, 80, that was like the greatest time.
It was kind of like that period of like new wave started to kind of take shape.
Yeah, and CBGB's had the whole thing going on, you know, with Patti Smith and Talking Heads and Blondie, and I was just those were all my absolute favorites. I mean, you know, and Patti Smith is like a big influence for me, even though she doesn't play instruments, but I love her anyway.
Yeah.
But so I tried to form this well, I was playing in all coffee houses, and I was playing all cover songs. I was playing David Bowie, believe it or not, James Taylor. I played like one or two Joni Mitchell songs. I played Indigo Girls. Let's see. I played Cat Stevens, things like that. Anyway, but I was really a person that imitated records. And I remember meeting this one woman in Gainesville who said, Audrey, you are so good, but have you ever thought of breaking away from imitation? Like you sound exactly like the record. I mean, even the guys, you sound like the girls and the guys. And I was like, yeah, no, I know you're right. I do. I am. I'm an imitator. I can play the exact guitar parts. I can sing the exact, you know, vocal parts. So then I met Nancy, another drummer in Gainesville, who was, she was on the women's rugby team. And I don't know, I started watching rugby. And anyway, she was like, do you play, oh no, she came to one of my open mics. She said, I'm a drummer. You want to form a band? So I was like, yeah, let's form a band. So we got some girls together. We were going to try to, this was right when the Bangles and the Go-Go's came out too. And I loved them I loved the Go-Go's first album and the Bangles' first album. The Bangles both of them came to Gainesville in 1981 or maybe two, before they really broke it in big, you know, and they played at small clubs.
Were you also going to a lot of shows, whether they were more, you know, larger venues or smaller ones? Like, were you finding that you were able to go to more? Because you said when you were younger in high school, you didn't get a chance to go out as much, but were you now in college going to more live music?
Yeah, I worked for the University of Florida musical. I worked for the activities department that scheduled all the concerts at the University of Florida. I was like, I set up all the musical equipment on the stages. So I set up the stage for the Pretenders, for the Psychedelic Furs, for REM, for Go-Go's. Well, that was later, the Go-Go's, after they kind of make it. Who other? Pat Metheny. I mean, I was like not a roadie, but I was like a tech soundy person. So I was going to so many great concerts.
Were there a lot of other women at that time that were doing that?
I was the only one.
What was that like for you, experiencing that and kind of being one of the very few, if not the only one, who was doing that type of work?
I mean, some people thought it was the coolest thing ever, and some people thought it was annoying. I don't know what else. Some people were like, well, who do you think you are? And other people were like, wow, that's so cool. It's like a mixed reaction, you know, but I didn't care. I loved it. I was like, how did I get this gig? I love it so much. It was like the greatest. Oh, do you remember the English beat?
Of course.
I hung with all those guys. I drove them around town. I was like their chauffeur. The keyboard of the English beat was this guy named Blockhead, and he was bald. I don't know if you remember. He actually wrote one of their songs called I Confess, he told me, which is one of their good. Well, I like their first album best, with Mirror in the Bathroom, but you know, the third album was pretty good too. And he was great. He was really fun, and I loved him. And you know, they and REM, I got to meet all those guys too. I was hanging around, setting up their stages. I mean, Michael Stipe, you couldn't get near him. He was super shy. But Peter Buck was super sweet, and Mike Mills was really, really intelligent. I loved him. You know, I mean, they were all great.
Yeah.
So our little woman's band practiced in this I told you, the storage studio, and we nailed you know, soundproofing things all to the walls, and we brought posters in, and so we started practicing. But again, I found a bass player, this woman named Claire. I was on guitar. Nancy was on drums, and we kept on going through different singer after singer, and we found one that we really liked. I don't even remember her name, but before we ever got to play anywhere, that's when I told you Atoms for Peace was first forming. It was 1983 or 4, 83 or 4, and they went. I'm not sure how, but George and Chip came to see our little all-girl band play in our storage room, and they said, "Hey, will you guys learn some of our songs and audition for our band?"
When you say George and Chip, you're referring to George, Tab, and Chip Fowkes, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And neither of them went to school. Chip was like he was like a golf bro. He never went to school. And Nancy was a full-time nurse, and I was a full-time student. And so I'm telling you, our band was we were very diverse backgrounds. And so anyway, he gave us a cassette tape of like 3 of their songs: Peace Gun, I think Cry, and Paint the Walls Gray. And he said, "Yeah, but we have a guitar player already. We need a bass player." And I said, yeah, I play bass. Yeah. So that week I went and I bought a bass. I remember the name of the place that Tom worked, Lipham Music Store. It was on University. Anyway, so I bought a bass, which happened to be
this is Tom Holtz, right? The guitarist.
I bought a bass from him. He was the guy who sold me the bass, and it was a Fender Precision, which was a sweet bass. I don't have it anymore. I wish I kept all the instruments that I've ever had. Right now I only have like five or six of them, but I've had a lot of instruments that at different times I've had to trade up or trade down, whatever I needed, I would like sell or trade. It's like I didn't work steady at the time. I was always broke. You know, it wasn't until, I don't know, later in life that I was able to just buy instruments and go to the store willy-nilly and buy things that I wanted. So I would have to trade. If I had a guitar that didn't happen to be using at the time, I would trade that to get $200 off of a bass that was $300.
Were you aware at that time that George Tab had been involved with Roach Motel?
Yeah, but I didn't like it. That's not the kind of music I liked. I mean, I would listen to it and I was like, I mean, when I tell you what my playlist was for the open mics, you can tell that's not really my jam. Now I listen to the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, and I like them a lot. I mean, even and the Raincoats and the Slits, and but at the time I was a little bit more into. I mean, what could I like? You know, I don't know, more like poetic music. You know, so I was like, Roach Motel. It's. I mean, I loved the Talking Heads, but to me they're not. They're very poetic as well. And Patti Smith. I didn't really like the grungy sound that much. I mean, the Ramones have never been really my favorite. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I've seen them in concert many times, but
I mean, how do you not like songs like More Beer and I Hate the Sunshine State and Brooke Shields Must Die from the Roach Motel?
I just wasn't into it. I was more into I don't know. I just wasn't, that's not what I was into.
It was quite different from what you're comparing though, but they were definitely one of the main punk bands from Gainesville of that era, and George Tab had played and started that band too. So you think about the early beginnings of Atoms for Peace. You mentioned that George and Chip were already formed that band, right? So at what point did you get involved with Atoms for Peace?
So I bought a bass when they said, you want to audition? And Nancy, Nancy had a set of drum, but Nancy and I practiced the songs for like about a week. They said, let's do an audition, and why don't you guys come in and audition? I can't remember where the audition was. It was at somebody's house. I don't remember whose. But anyway, when we got into the audition, I had sort of souped up the my bass lines to be a little fancier than like, although Peace Gun is a very, rudimentary kind of, thumping bass line. You have to do that. But I tried to sort of like on the song Paint the Walls Gray. I don't know if you're familiar with that song. It's kind of a fancy little funk riff, in fact. I mean, it's like, a little bit fancy or whatever. And so we finished our audition. They said, yeah, we want you guys in the band. And we said, okay, cool, great. And at the same time, somehow, but now this is where I don't know, and maybe Tom would tell you, but he doesn't like, you spoke to him. He doesn't tell stories in a linear way sometimes. It will take him a while, but I don't know how he was invited to play in the band, because Tom didn't play Roach Motel music. He didn't play Tom was a very accomplished guitar player, and he was in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers for about 2 months. I told you. And the reason he was fired from that band, or I don't know if it was fired or whatever you want to call it. I hope, if Tom ever hears this, that no offense, Tom, I'm just telling from what you ever told me. If he ever hears this, but I mean, from what I understand, Tom said, it's too fancy for me. You're too good. we need simpler leads. And if you ever listen to, the lead for Breakdown, which is one of their first big songs, I mean, it's in the E minor pentatonic scale straight through. It's like a riff that any lead guitar can play. But so Tom suddenly was in the band too with us. I don't know whether Tom was in before me or after me. That's where I get a little bit hazy.
Did you all start to hang out more and become friends?
Oh, yes, very much. Yeah. Well, anyway, so Tom joined right around when we joined, and the big thing was we had to find a steady rehearsal space. I don't know, Chip found this old barn. I'm serious. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was on the outskirts of Gainesville, and there used to be a lot of really empty space outside of Gainesville. And we had this little barn. I don't think there was any AC in it or a refrigerator or anything. It was like it was like where they used to keep cows or horses. So we brought all of our equipment there, and that was our rehearsal space. I don't know, we had electric, I will say that, but I have to say now, when I look back at it, it was the greatest rehearsal space. I mean, we put chairs there and people would come out, and
How often were you rehearsing there?
I guess it was twice a week. And at the time, we all wrote our own parts. Because Chip didn't play any instruments, and Tom, he didn't really play bass or drums. And so, like, Nancy and I really came up with hers and she didn't come up with my part. We both came up with her drum lines, and I came up with all my bass parts. And then there was the banjo at one time. I wish that I would have done more background singing, but I was just, I don't know why they didn't want me to, or I don't know. I did background singing on only 2 songs. But anyway, we practiced a lot and we started getting okay. And then we got a manager who was really Chip's best friend. And he just started booking us at places like the Rathskeller, which I loved playing at in Gainesville, and the Orange and Brew, I think it was called, which was, it was right at the Rights Union. So we played a lot on the campus. And then we started playing at places in downtown Gainesville, my favorite of which was called the Metro. That was that place was so kick-ass cool. I loved it so much. God, I would love to go to a place like that now.
What were some of your earliest memories of some of those shows? Like, how was the turnout? Were there a lot of was it mostly a lot of college kids that were coming to those shows? And what were the crowds like back then?
my we had a devoted following. I wouldn't say it was huge. I really wouldn't. They were very devoted, but it was not huge. I don't know why we could not catch on. I feel. Remember, I told you I'm very bad at self promotion, and in my musical life, that's been my biggest problem because I've never been able to self promote, and I seem to not get connected to managers who do a lot of promotion either. I mean, we started traveling around the state. We got gigs in Tampa. We played once at this place called Einstein A Go-Go, which was in Jacksonville. I don't know if have ever heard of Einstein A Go-Go?
No, I had not heard of that place before.
Cool. We played down in Miami at a place called Flynn's.
Of course. What was it like playing Flynn's? Because I had Richard Shelter on before, who had been a huge promoter, promoted Flynn's for a while. So what was it like playing there?
I loved it. It was right there on the beach. I mean, the thing about Chip, our lead singer, is I would always walk into a gig and be very concerned about what kind of stage there was going to be, because Chip had the propensity towards not knowing his own physical limitations. I mean, he was very into the mosh pit style thing. He would like jump into the audience all the time. And I was like, Chip, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. And I'll never forget it. Flynn's, it was this high stage, and he jumped like he did practically like a split in midair and jumped into the audience. I was like, somebody's gonna get hurt. Don't do this. But I mean, he got like I didn't. Chip is a very long story. I don't, and rest in peace. He's no longer with us. But sorry.
All right. Yeah. Chip passed away back in the mid I can't remember what year it was when he passed.
It was maybe 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading about it in it was in one of the like a local publication, because he still lived in Florida for.
Yeah, he did. I mean, after Out for Peace broke up, like it was they stayed together about a year after I left, but it didn't work out. I should have never left.
With with some of these different events that you were playing, and especially getting a chance to play back in South Florida, because that's kind of where you grew up, right? So what was that like for you, considering like you grew up down there and now you're playing a show at a place like Flynn's, where every local band and a lot of bands that were out from outside of Florida that would come and play. So what was that like for you, getting a chance to play at a club like Flynn's? Then you grew up in South Florida.
I don't know. It was okay. I mean, I was nervous. This was the first time my parents actually met the whole band, was when we played at Flynn's. And my parents did not really support me being in the band. They didn't care for it. They really didn't. They thought I was probably doing things that I shouldn't be doing, which they were kind of right, but who wasn't. My parents really wanted me to do kind of, they wanted me to go to law school, and I really kind of did want to at one point too, and this was obviously a sidetrack, so I brought the whole band home to meet my parents once, and it was like I was bringing my date home or something to meet them, and I don't know, it's like my parents didn't care for them. They were, Chip was very hard edged. He always wore, leather everywhere. He wore leather everywhere. I mean, in 90-degree weather, he would wear leather. And I don't know. They didn't really see it going anywhere for me. They thought it was just something that I was doing that was wasting time.
What about other parents from other members of the band? Did they have any opinions as well?
Well, I never met any of their parents except Nancy's, whose stepfather, no, whose real father, and no, whose parents lived in Port St. Lucie. They supported her because her mother, listen to this, her mother in the 1940s was in an all-female jazz ensemble. She played trombone. I think it was trombone. So her parents were totally behind her in doing music. But remember, she was also a nurse. So she also had a career. I don't know how Nancy was, she's one thing about Nancy is you can never say she's not dedicated. And she's dedicated to anything she does 100%. And she was the one that had the truck that we moved all our crap, all our equipment in. We had a PA system.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, half the time she loaded it and unloaded it herself.
Wow.
Nancy, our drummer. And we're like, Chip is very muscular. So like, but he was, a little bit of a prima donna sometimes. It's like, we didn't have a huge amount we had like one or two guys once in a while help us. Anyway, so the return to Miami, the prodigal daughter returns to Miami. I mean, it was a little tainted, I guess, by my parents not being very crazy about the band. They thought it was not, and also they didn't really care for the music, to be honest. A few of my cousins came, they liked it. My brother came, he liked it. That was nice for me. But nobody was like turning over doing backflips over it. No one. I mean, when I listen to the album now, we only made one album. I think it's really good.
Yeah, we can. Let's show the cover of the album. So, Atoms for Peace, the only record the band put out, which, when you look at the cover has a very artsy kind of vibe to it. So what do you remember about the cover? Whose decision was it to kind of go with this as the artwork? Because back in that time, also, a lot of bands like this, you sometimes would even see the band members, sometimes even on the cover.
Well, we were on the back.
And you were on the back. Yeah, you're on the back of the album. So there is the band, and there you are right there. This is the album. So what do you remember about the artwork for the record?
One of the reasons that artwork is on it is because we had a song called Chemical Rain, the one that I played banjo on. That song was written by Tom. And he co-wrote it with a friend of his named William J. George. And William J. George, Bill J. George, three first names, was also an artist, and he was the artist of that piece. And he does a lot. He's still doing art in Atlanta today, and he's in galleries and everything. It's beautiful stuff. That's one of his earlier styles. He doesn't do as geometric anymore, but he does beautiful work. Beautiful. Anyway, we wanted to feature his artwork because we loved it. I forgot to tell you.
Yeah.
There is another very big reason we featured it. He played the harmonica on that song. That's the main reason.
I see.
The artist played the harmonica on that song.
So he played our harmonica, and I'm looking over at the insert here, and he played on Chemical Rain. Ooh. That's right.
Did he get a songwriting credit for that? I think he did.
His name is on there. Yeah, his name is on there. Lyrics by William J. George.
Those lyrics are dark, man. I don't know if you've ever read them. The drops are falling harder, fluid dripping down my face. I'm caught without a shelter. Can't find one anyplace. I mean, it's like about acid rain, It's like,
yeah.
The weird thing about the lyrics of Atoms for Peace, and this is one thing that I was telling you that I'm very much into lyrics. I'm a lyric person. I focus a lot on lyrics. The Atoms for Peace lyrics were very dark. I mean, if we go through the topics of the songs, the first song, Hearts and Flowers, is about heroin. The second song, Pictures, is about the apocalypse, the end of the world. The third song is about society is about like children being excluded, being outcast. Fourth song, Cry, is about there's no justice anywhere. Chemical Rain is about acid rain. Let's see, on the next side, Bang Bang is about people killing each other. Paint the Walls Gray, I don't know what the hell that's about. Peace Gun is about too many guns. And my favorite song on the album, which is called Stop the Killing, is about too many guns. So the whole thing is like practically, it's like an agenda for the Congress or something.
Who was doing most of the songwriting?
Chip. So I used to think that was one of the reasons that we didn't get the kind of traction that we really should have gotten, because I think that the lyrics were just a little bit too deep and dark. I mean, some of our influences, for example, U2 or, Joy Division or Gang of Four or Psychedelic Furs or REM, none of those people had political lyrics. None of them did. They were not deep and dark like ours. Ours were too dark. I was like, God, can't you write a song that's like maybe not quite as dark? And the other thing is, when he sang them, he sounded angry. And so, he was a good singer, but he was an angry singer. So it's hard the only other band that really I could compare, the only singer I could compare him to of that time was like The Alarm. And also, Chip sounded a little bit in his own right like Jim Morrison. There was a song on the album called Hushabye, which was a beautiful song, but very dark also. But he sounded just like Jim Morrison. And he sounded like Jim Morrison too.
I think that's one of the things about the band that's interesting is when you listen to the album, you can hear this variety of influence because some of it has this alternative rock sound of that era, but then some of it has, you can almost sound like a little like post-punk ish. Some of it, there's like banjo in it too, which you played, of course.
That's my acoustic background. I played bluegrass. I mean,
and you have that element in it. So it kind of has a little bit of everything in there. And that's what I think is one of my personal favorite things about the album, is because it does kind of have this different take and different sound to it. And one of the other people mentioned as one of the producers is Bob McPeak. What kind of influence did he have on the sound of the record?
It was his studio. That was his studio.
So we're talking about Mirror Image Studios. Yeah.
I mean, I disagreed with a lot of the production decisions very much. If I had it to do over again, I would have done so many things different. To this day, every time I listen to it, I hear all the different things I would have done. But he did the best he could, and I was too young to be taken seriously. I mean, he was the older guy who owned the studio. It's like I had a lot of opinion. Oh, there's a part, I don't know if you know the song Stop the Killing, but there's a part where there's a drum machine in it rather than the drum, the actual drums. And it's because we were using for the first time synthetic drums because of the sound. I played the drums for that. And it was like this real powerful, like horses galloping drum sound that really made that's my favorite song on the whole album, because the way it's produced is worthy of the song. But a lot of them, like for example, Chemical Rain, whenever I listen to it, you yourself said it's cool that you can actually hear the banjo. But I mean, there was a problem with a lot of the mixing of that song because a lot of the things were at the very same level, like the banjo, the harmonica, and some of the other things, the voices were kind of all right in the same audible range. And so it's not really that way that song should sound in a studio. But that was the only studio in Gainesville. And see, Bob McPeak, he owned the only studio. He also co-owned a record store in Gainesville called Yesterday and Today. No, not Yesterday and Today. He co-owned a record store which was called, it was like the best used record store in Gainesville, right across the street from campus. And they liked Atoms for Peace a lot. That's why he said, why don't you come record in my studio? If we should have recorded at somewhere different. I think it would have been better. I don't think he had certain kinds of equipment that would have.
Yeah. I think sometimes when you look at other bands from that era, it seemed like a lot of bands would also go and record near Atlanta as well. And I don't know if that was because there just wasn't a lot of options in the North Florida area. But were you aware of other local artists or bands that were also recording at the same mirror image, or were they going elsewhere to do their recordings?
I don't know. Maybe you could tell me. I don't know.
Was there ever any demo that you had recorded first, or was it just right into the studio to record the album?
Well, they had a cassette. I don't know where they even made it. That's how Nancy and I learned the songs. I don't know how they made it. So no, I don't think there was a demo of any kind. I don't know why that band, Atoms for Peace, it's like somehow we didn't go a normal route. I don't know. And it really was the end of it, because we just didn't have anyone taking care of our needs or managing our needs. And and I didn't know how to do anything. I really didn't. And you know what? Neither did Chip or Tom. Tom was exclusively a musician. I mean, he's worse at self-promotion than I am. And Chip was a golf pro before he was in this band. So we were floating in the atmosphere with no guidance whatsoever.
Do you really think like maybe for some other band members that this could have been just like something to do, like something in college to do, like it was just mostly for fun? Or did you find that like maybe there was a passion? Because it sounds like you may have had a lot of passion for this, but maybe some of the other members didn't share that. What are your thoughts?
No, every single member, once George was not in the band, George Tabb left the band after that. I told you, we played at CBGB's and they had a fist fight on the stage and he wasn't in the band after that.
Yeah. What happened with that? How did that all come about?
Well, I'll tell you the CBGB story in a minute, but let me just say, once he was out of the band and we really started focusing on the songwriting, we were all dead serious. I mean, and dead committed. Dead. The only one that was not 100% committed is me. And the only reason I was not is because I had little birds whispering in my ear that I needed to be doing other things. I was the only one. And to this day, I regret leaving that band when I did. Because I just didn't see us ever getting any help. I was like, we've got to get something together, like a press kit or something. Isn't there anybody that we can get that will help? And I was just like, I don't know. I'm a student in college right now. I don't know anything. If I was who I am now, I would have done more. But I'm not still great at self-promotion, and I don't. I've been in several bands, and I never have been able to promote them correctly ever.
And that tended to be a downfall for a lot of bands of that era too, who may not have had that promotion. Even bands that could have been signed to pretty major labels still kind of fell on that corridor of not getting that push that they needed. Do you remember any local publications of the time, especially even the college? Was there any press for the band that you can remember at that time?
You know what? I feel like there was, but I don't know. I just don't even know or remember. I mean, it's terrible. I know. I mean, there must have been something.
Sure.
I mean, we were playing all around the campus. And
I remember you also saying that you played some shows outside of Florida, right? In Georgia, like Athens, right?
Yeah, we played at the 40 Watt Club.
What was that like?
It was great. It was good. I mean, I loved it.
And you think about a place like that, a venue that bands like REM, B-52s,
And I
amongst
told
a
you, we
lot of
played at
others.
this place, Einstein at Go-Go, when we opened for 10,000 Maniacs. We were an opener for them.
What do you remember about how you got booked on that show?
That I don't know. That was a real fortuitous thing. We didn't even really meet the 10,000 Maniacs. Unfortunately, I love Natalie Merchant so much, but we kind of showed up. They started so late. We played, I think, from 8 to 10:30, and they started at like midnight or something. So we were kind of hanging around, waiting. I don't know who booked that show. Maybe, I don't know, but it was probably our manager, Dean, somehow booked it. And he booked the CBGB show too. And we were supposed to send a press kit to Stuart Copeland. So from the Police, the drummer's brother started a label, IRS. That was what REM's first label was, IRS. And I think they had a few other things like I think maybe they were with the B-52s in the beginning and the Divinyls, those bands.
Pretty sure the Go-Go's were on IRS at one point
so,
too.
right, yes. And we were supposed to send a whole press kit to them. And I don't know whatever happened to that. I said, what about Copeland? He's doing a small record label trying to get, I kept on saying, why can't we send stuff to them? Why don't we send? And it just never happened. I know it sounds like me crying and whining about being a victim, like nobody else, like, why didn't you do it if nobody else was doing it? But I just didn't. I was writing and playing the songs. I didn't know. I thought somebody else should do it.
And I think for that period and on IRS, Atoms for Peace definitely had a sound that could have fit very easily on that label for what they were doing in that time period. So, but yeah, like you said, if there was no one really pushing that needle, how was it gonna get out there?
We didn't have a manager. We did not have a legit manager. That was the biggest problem.
And Dean Jordan was the friend of Chip, right?
Right. I wasn't going to mention his name, but
well, he is listed in the insert of the record. I mean, what were his qualifications to be the manager? He was just a friend. That was pretty much it. Was he going to college for business management or anything like that? No.
I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
What his qualifications were because
okay.
I don't know.
And the last show, do you remember where that was?
Oh, I think it might have been Tampa. I don't remember the name of the place that we played though.
What was it like playing in Tampa?
It was great. I loved it. It was really good. Unfortunately, I was drinking a lot of Crown Royal whiskey at the time, and I never drank during shows, but after the shows, I kind of did a little bit. Tampa was good. I mean, I don't know. It was good. It was good. I had a little weird following. It was like I had a following of ladies. It was kind of fun. And then I had some guys who were always trying to like maul me when I was playing bass. They were like always trying to like infringe upon my. I remember one time I walked down off the stage and I was doing my pattern that I play when I'm playing Cry. It's like down, and I always went into the audience when we were doing that. And this guy was like humping me from every direction. I was like, dude, let me play my guitar. Well, my bass or whatever.
Were there any other situations where maybe fans got a little rowdy or things got uncomfortable, especially being a woman playing in a band like that? Where
I had a lot of inappropriate comments at me. I did. And the thing about it is that, I'm not heterosexual. So it's like I didn't really appreciate it, but I didn't also want to be a bitch. So I didn't want to be mean or mad or like rude. So I just allowed a lot of things to happen. I did. I was just like, for the good of the band, But you asked if our band got close, and we were two guys and two girls, and I'll never forget. I'm not going to go into too many detail, but one night I think it was when we were playing in Jacksonville. It used to be that the bar owner would put the bands up to play, where if you're going to play somewhere, they would give you a place to stay. They had this room we were going to stay in. We were all going to stay in the same room. And it was like a cave. And like it was in like an abandoned castle. I don't know whether I'm remembering it incorrectly or not, but it was the weirdest place in the world. And we had a like spiritual awakening that night. We sat together and we talked, and I don't know, we all stayed there in that room together. That was a pretty interesting evening.
Yeah.
I mean, to have two guys and two girls staying in the same room,
Sure. Yeah.
So,
I can imagine. And
it's not what you're imagining, though. But I mean,
not going that direction. But
yeah, no. I mean, I mean, we all had partners, but well, I shouldn't say anything more about it. But it was really interesting.
yeah.
I got a lot closer with Chip that evening, and I have to say, it's like he was a big, bad, mean bear with a bad temper a lot of times. And then the next time you'd turn around, he would be like this cuddly kitten. I mean, which is weird because his stage persona was not that of a cuddly kitten. I mean, he was like angry and large,
And I wanted to ask you too, because obviously Chip has passed on, and some of the members are not here for the interview. So, from what you know and what you can remember, what was Chip's thoughts about the band and just the legacy? Did he ever share with you any opinions or any thoughts on the band and the legacy of it?
He was always upset that I was not more dedicated. And I was as dedicated as I could be, but he got mad at me about it a lot. I really do believe that he thought that we were going to be an institution. I mean, he thought it was forever, and he thought we were going to be, I don't know, you too, or he thought we were going to be like an important big band. And Tom didn't care. But he was very, very good. See, the thing about Tom is Tom doesn't care about anything else except playing really good guitar, which is one thing I love about him. He doesn't think about anything else but playing the best guitar you can play for the part you're playing.
Did Tom ever share any thoughts with you about his thoughts and memories of the band?
No, he was as dedicated as could possibly be. The only thing is, sometimes we would practice and Chip had a temper. And like I said, rest in peace. And I don't want to disrespect his memory in any way, because I mean, looking back on it, I really loved and cared about him, but he had a very bad temper. And sometimes we would go to practice and we would walk in ready to go over something, and we could tell just in the first 5 minutes whether it was going to be a good practice or a bad practice because of his temper. And he was the kind of person that if something was wrong or bad, or if his mind was bothering him, we would not be having a good practice. We would be having a really negative experience. And that was what in the end made me quit, is that his temper for me became kind of toxic. And but sometimes you have to accept, like in retrospect, he was the artist. He was writing the songs. And sometimes the artist, quote unquote, with a capital A, is high maintenance, and he was high maintenance. He really was. And like I told you, we were afraid that he was going to injure himself sometimes when he jumped off stages. And, sometimes he would yell the lyrics like he was really mad. And if he would have been able to contain his rage, he sort of had a rage, I think that we could have stayed together.
What about Nancy, from what you know? What's her thoughts on the legacy of the band?
Well, I know Nancy very well. She and I have been in several bands together since then. She lives not far from me. We used to be very good friends. Right now, we're a little bit not as great of friends anymore because we had a little falling out. But I mean, we'll always be friends. And she regrets it. She says she always, I mean, until we're dead, she'll probably say she always wishes we could get back together. But I mean, when Chip died, that ended that.
Was there ever any talk though about even getting together to play some of the songs of Adams for Peace just as like a tribute to?
I wanted
Yeah,
to. I did, but I didn't. Without Chip, I don't know if we could do it. We'd be able to play all the songs, but I don't know who would sing. I mean, Tom sings 2 of the songs, and I certainly sing okay. And I know how to sing every word of the song because I can imitate. I'm an imitator. Remember, I told you that.
Right.
I can imitate Chip, you know. There's a red sky in the morning. I mean, I know all his phrasings and everything. But I would love to, but we're kind of old now, you know. I mean, Tom is older than Nancy and I by quite a while. I mean, I think he's playing in a country band now. And Nancy and I started another band, and I asked her to be part of it. Well, I asked her to be part of it, and we did that about 10 years ago. It was called She'll Be Apples. And I told you I was always on searching for a good singer, and I was already a teacher by at that time, and I already had been teaching for 20 years. And this woman came into our school as a new teacher. Her name was Jackie Reyes, and she and I became really good friends. And she just was the epitome of somebody who could front a band. I said, "Have you ever been in a band before?" She said, "No, I do karaoke." I said, "I'm going to teach you how to be a front person of a band, okay?" She goes, "Okay." And so she became the best singer that I've ever had in any band. And that was called She'll Be Apples. We played in Miami Springs. We played in Hollywood. Another teacher played guitar with us. I was on guitar, like kind of lead. And then another teacher that we worked with, this guy played rhythm guitar, and then Nancy was in it. And one of our students who had just graduated, played bass. And it was good. We did really eclectic covers. It was a good band, but then Jackie got moved to Tampa. So
with Shield the Apples, was there ever any talk to record any original music?
This was not original. We were
all covers. Yeah, all covers.
I mean, we did kind of interesting covers, like we did Walking After Midnight by Patsy Cline. We did I don't know, Roadhouse Blues by the Doors. We did some really random things. It wasn't not like what you typically see. We did like Pictures of You by The Cure.
Okay. Did you ever sneak in an Adams for the Peace song?
No, they didn't. I know, we really should have. No one would know it. I mean, no one knows it. You're the only person I've met that's come. Well, here's an interesting one. Of my students, I was a debate coach for about 10 years. It was speech and debate. And one of my students on my debate team was in a record store, and she found my record and bought it. And she was walking around school with it. And I was like, "Oh my God, where did you get that?"
I'm going to. So here's one of the clips.
Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, let me see. Yeah, teacher. Yeah, there it is. I mean, that was like the first. That was the 3rd year I became a teacher. So they did an article in the Miami Herald about me being in a band, becoming a teacher after that. And there was a cover of it. It was on the cover of another section too.
And you could see in the article, it talks about you being in a band called Adams for Peace. How did that come about? How did that interview or that story come about from what you can remember?
Well, I was teaching, and there was a woman named. Well, there's another part of the article. Did you get the other part that I sent with it on the front page? It was like me with a rose in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up next.
So there was this lady named Linda Schwartz. I had her daughter. She was a teacher at my school that I was working at the time, Nautilus Middle School on Miami Beach. And her daughter was one of my students. And in one of my classes, I accidentally mentioned that I was in a band. So her daughter told her Mommy, Miss Silverman was in a band. And Linda Schwartz, I think her name was in touch with the people of the Miami Herald. So she said, that's really cool. We should get somebody to write an article about it. So here's me posing for that picture. And in the back, I don't know if you can see it, but I have sentence diagrams with song lyrics. And I think it was a Rolling Stones, Wild Horses Couldn't Drag Me Away.
I see that.
Horses couldn't drag, away. And I think there was another one too, right over here. I can't remember what song it was, but you see all my little, books in front of me and there. So it says Audrey Silverman, a rock guitarist who became an English teacher. See, this was bullshit. I didn't tell him this. Sometimes jumps up and down to get her students' attention, which I never did. That you used to like. Did you ever see or hear of? And this was right in the beginning of the 80s. There was a woman named Jane Yee. Jane Yee. Y-I. Jane Yee. Who used to play with just her on guitar, and she had a bass player who was this woman. And they used to play at the Howard Johnson's. There was a little lounge at the Howard Johnson's on 13th Street in Gainesville. I used to see them every Friday night. This Jane Yee was so phenomenal. She played some original songs, but mostly she played deep cuts of songs that people would not necessarily have known. Like I remember she played Union City Blues by Blondie, Oh, what are we gonna do? Union City Blues. And she played this old Civil War song that was so amazing. She played songs by John Prine, I remember. It was like a little bit, not really country, I might call it Americana, but she also played really cool, edgy things too. She was so good. Her voice was beyond belief amazing. She never did anything that I know of. And I've searched for her. She was one of the greatest performers that honestly to this day that I've ever seen. Jane Yee. And she went on to do I think she self-produced an album of relaxation music or something.
Okay.
And that's it. She was so good. I mean, she was devastatingly good.
And you kind of jogged my memory a little bit, speaking about other local musicians from the Gainesville area. Did you ever get a chance to see bands, or you were aware of other bands like the Muttley Chicks or Cindy Brady's Lisp? Were you aware of those bands too? Those kind of early
Not that
Gainesville
one,
bands?
but there was another lady that I used to like to go see sometimes too, Nancy Luca. Nancy Luca was all right. She was the next Tom Petty. That's what they used to call her, the next Tom Petty from Gainesville. She was like a female version of Tom Petty. And to this day, nothing. Not a thing. She used to be kick ass. She was harder than Jane Yee, though. She was more like metal, a little bit more metal, But that was Nancy Luca. Nancy Luca and Jane Yee, these were two women that were, and I'm very, very critical at music, and I was just diehard fans. I also used to go see this band. There was a jazz band in Gainesville that I used to love called Forecast. They were phenomenal. And again, nothing ever happened with any of these. See, I always thought there's something wrong with Florida because I've seen these great acts and they've never become anything, ever. Am I wrong? Maybe you know more than I do.
I think for a lot of musicians back in that period, or just bands in general, there could have been talk about moving somewhere else because they weren't really getting they weren't getting that traction in some of the Florida Florida landscape, so to speak. So they weren't getting that. So this, and that's why also, considering what you were saying about places like New York and other areas too. Did Atoms for Peace? Did you all ever have any conversations about taking the band elsewhere, or were you all pretty much just gonna?
We should have, but we didn't. I mean, I'm telling you, nobody knew what the hell to do. Nobody knew what the hell. I had to finish school, and I did. I actually graduated late because of Atoms for Peace. I did. I failed one of my last classes at University of Florida because I was playing too much. I was in the band. I was doing too much band stuff, and so it's like right after that, I had to kind of get my shit together so I could at least get my degree.
Right.
And so, I mean, I didn't want to not have a degree after I left, there. So I stayed on, and we were still playing together, but I was getting more and more doubtful because it was taking too long. We had already been in the band for like 2 years and nothing. We made this one album with, a low budget album that looked like it was, made on, I don't know. It didn't look like a very professionally done album. I mean, and it didn't sound like that great either. I mean, that was my opinion. I think that I told you, I think the recording was really lacking. And
I remember you saying that. And I guess for some that kind of appeal of lower production value can also be appealing to some people too. So, but I get as a musician, you're going into the studio, you're looking for the best output you can get. So, but it is great though that album does exist, because that's one of the very few, if not the only, tangible items that you can have of what Atoms for Peace did. There's really nothing else that exists. So did you all record any other songs that didn't make the album?
No. It's on YouTube. I told you, right?
Yeah. And
I think it has about three viewers.
The link to the album will be in the description of the interview. And every once in a while, you might go to a record store and you could stumble upon the Atoms for Peace record, which you wouldn't necessarily know was from Gainesville until you looked at the back of it, and you would see that, okay, this is, did anyone ever approach you or any other members of the band at any time to do any type of retrospective of the band?
Nope. Jeff, seriously, you're the first person that's ever contacted me about this. That's why Tom said, why would you want to talk to me? I mean, I guess we all three, I mean, I would say four, but Chips, we all three have figured that Atoms for Peace didn't stir up any interest whatsoever at anywhere. I mean, that's how it appears, so when you contacted me, I was like, that's why I'm sure that Tom said, why would you want to talk to me? First of all, he's like that. He's not, I don't know. He's very humble, but I mean, also nothing ever happened. I mean, it's like nothing. 0.
Well, I'm glad that you have made some time to share the story of Atoms for Peace. Can we look
at the other pictures that I sent you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let me go ahead and get those up here real quick. Give me just a second to bring some of those up. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up, I was trying to bring it up earlier, but for some reason it did not want to cooperate. So now I think it's going to be good. So this was the photo we wanted to talk about earlier. This is the back of the album. And where was that picture taken?
Flynn's.
At Flynn's.
Yep. That I remember because he wore that shirt. I was like, why are you wearing a New York shirt? That's dorky. Oh, but if you look closely, Nancy's wearing a shirt that says Metro. That was that place in Gainesville that I told you I love so much.
Did you and Chip kind of coordinate your outfits because you're both kind of wearing gray pants and a black shirt
No, but y'all, I'll tell you something.
and the hairstyle too? Look at the hairstyle between you and Chip. It looks. I mean, you could pass as brother and sister in that.
I know. We could. We absolutely could. Is there any way you could bring it a little bit more close up?
Yeah, of course.
Move it down a little bit. Yeah. Honestly, when I was looking at this the other day, I was like, God, Chip and I could pass for brother and sister. And most of the time, my hair was bright red. Right here, I think I was. Shush. Most of the time, you can't see, but I had one of those long tails too. You remember the Thompson twins?
Worse.
Remember how that guy had that long tail?
Yes.
I had an 80s tail. I'm embarrassed to say. But this is my Fender Precision bass right here. And I'll never forget this guitar that Tom is using right here. It's he was a tech guy with his guitar. He used this was a Roland guitar. And I don't know if you remember the sound that the guitar has on the first song of the album. It's called Hearts and Flowers. This is Hush. This is the guitar he uses for that album because it sounds like a synthesizer. And that was really innovative for the time, you know?
My favorite song on the album, and I like the whole record, but my favorite song on the album is Pictures. I love that song. That song could have been a single, I think. If I was a record exec back in that time period, that song could have been a single. And yeah, I mean, that's my personal favorite song. So what are your
yeah, that's a very important thing that you just said. I agree. That's the best. That's the most. My favorite song on the album is Stop the Killing, but Pictures is definitely the most appealing song as far as possibly having a single. But the reason that kind of screwed us up is because Tom was not the real singer of the band. He didn't, in other words, the one song that was the best on the album was not even with our main singer. And so it kind of was screwing with Chip's head a little bit. That everyone said that's the best song and that should be your single because everyone said that. And he wasn't singing it. And so this is the problem. Chip, he was a kind of a good singer, but kind of Tom was better. You know, and Chemical Rain was a better song too. But I mean, I love Stop the Killing. It makes me cry. It's one of my favorite songs. But Chip's voice is not inviting. It's not as inviting as Tom's. And so that was the other problem our band had, is that Chip wrote all the songs. He wrote the lyrics. He was bought into them. He really believed in them. But his singing was very erratic and unsteady and too filled with rage for many people to relate to it.
What do you remember from the local radio scene at that time? Did the band get any play on local college radio from what you can remember?
I mean, there wasn't really a college radio station in Gainesville that I knew of. There was one in Miami, VUM. I love WVUM. I think we might have gotten a play or two on VUM, but I don't really know for sure.
I know there was a show that played more of the underground music called Off the Beaten Path with Bob Slade. To your knowledge, did he at all play any of the songs off the Atoms for Peace album?
It sounds familiar, but I don't know. I don't even know.
Could have.
What?
He could have. I mean,
he might have.
Yeah.
We missed the boat in every way. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing about when I moved to California. You were saying, what other music have you done? When I moved to California, I was in a classical orchestra. I was the percussionist in an orchestra. It was an all-women's orchestra. It was called the San Francisco Bay Women's Community Orchestra. I was in that for like 3 years.
Wow.
I played timpani and percussion. I taught myself how to play it all.
So you really do kind of play a bit of the spectrum when it comes to instruments. You play guitar, bass,
I play
percussion.
drums too.
Yeah.
I was, for the last 2 years, I've been teaching as an instructor for the School of Rock in Boca Raton, and I'm the adult band director. So people who've never been in bands before, and they're like older now, take their chance at trying to be in a band. So they sign up for School of Rock, and I'm the one that tells them how to be in a band and how to play. Usually they're supposed to have some experience, and like they already have a separate teacher outside of the band setting, and I'm just supposed to show them how to coordinate together. So I've done 4 seasons with them, and it's okay. I mean, there are a lot of beginners, and
When I think of School of Rock, I think of the movie with Jack Black.
Right. Well, that's where they got their name.
Yeah.
But they're all over. It's all over the country now.
Right.
School of Rocks, for kids and for adults. So, but I played for 2 seasons. I played drums in School of Rock because we didn't have a drummer, so I just played the drums.
If you had to choose your preference, what instrument do you think is the most passionate for you to play?
I love bass guitar and drums, but right now I would probably say I love drums best of all, because you don't have to set up if you go to, here's why. I've spent my whole life carrying heavy equipment to and from gigs. And usually the drums are going to be there for the gig. A lot of times they have drums already set up. But so I like playing drums when you don't have to set up your own drums, the best. If you had to set up your own drums, it's the worst. But guitar is my number one passion. I mean, I feel like I was born with a guitar in my hand, and I'll probably die with a guitar in my hand.
What are you doing now musically? What are you up to?
Hardly anything. Lessons. I'm giving lessons and doing School of Rock. I was in a band before COVID called Silver Storm, after me, Silverman, and it was all women. They were not, they were okay. But that girl Lori, that was my first friend in music, was in that band. I called her, and she wanted, and she's a great drummer, by the way. But we couldn't find a good singer. We went through, honestly, so many singers. Our first singer, rest in peace, died. She had a double lung failure, died. Our second singer quit. Our third singer was good, but then, she was okay, but I think she quit because she and her husband were going to move to a farm. And then the fourth singer we had was okay, but that's when COVID hit. We found it harder and harder to practice. So during COVID, I moved, and they were in Hollywood, and now I moved up to Delray Beach, and I couldn't practice with them anymore. So
you weren't kidding when you said about just the kind of like the singer curse in a way. I mean, hearing some of these stories, and just the fact that it all kind of goes back to finding someone who can not only sing, but just one person to kind of stick with the whole piece.
Here's another example. So I was playing a gig with Silver Storm, and this girl, Melissa, came up to me and she said, "Hey, you're really good. Can you play with me? I want to find somebody who can be a guitar player, and I want to be able to play, and sing." And she said, "I'm a really good singer." I said, "You are?" She said, "Yeah, I'm a really good singer." So she and I started kind of working together, and it was actually we didn't ever get together because we lived very far apart. She gave me a list of all the songs she knew. I gave her a list of all the songs I knew. And when we did our first gig, we had never once practiced. We met at the gig. This was about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We had a gig at this place called Cloud 9 in Hollywood. I was just playing guitar, and she was just singing. But it was phenomenal. I'm going to tell you something. That gig was one of the most fun gigs I've ever done. And she was an amazing singer. People were screaming and dancing. They were loving it. So she asked me, she goes, "Listen, I only live in Florida for part of the year. I live in Costa Rica for half the year and Florida for the other half." She goes, "Will you come to Costa Rica, stay at my house with me, and we can do gigs in Costa Rica?" I said, "Wow, that sounds great." It's like an all expenses trip paid. So I did that, and she set it up so that we had 6 gigs while I was there. We were there for 2 weeks, and she got a whole band together to play. And we played half, just she and I, and then half with another band. You should have seen these people in Costa Rica. It was like we were the biggest band in the world. They were screaming, dancing, screaming. They were on the dancing on the ceiling. I mean, I was like, what the hell? They were going, Audrey, because we were playing. Trying to remember, this is one song where I had this really cool guitar riff that I was playing. They started chanting my name. Oh, and we were using a keyboard for some percussion too that she managed to be able to figure out. And we were playing dance music, just the two of us, and me on guitar, and it was great. But she got sick, and she's in Costa Rica most of the year, and I wanted to continue, but it didn't work out anymore. I mean, it didn't work. I don't know why. We did like 10 gigs that I thought were great.
Right.
And then suddenly she was too sick to ever come to Florida anymore. And I really wasn't going to move to Costa Rica.
Sure. I mean, that's certainly, disappointing that nothing really came else after, but the fact that you were able to almost have sort of like bookend to your musical journey, although you haven't stopped, right? I mean, you're not still performing as much, right? But the fact that you had that opportunity to go and play and get that kind of reaction, I mean, had to feel good for you, thinking about where you started to where it all kind of ended up. That had to have been a nice feeling to have to kind of wrap things up.
No, it's true. No one ever was chanting Adam for peace, Adam for peace. I mean, people liked us, but they were very reticent. I mean, I'm just trying to look at it like objectively, with no ego attached to it. When I really think about Atoms for Peace and our performances, people were very lukewarm. I mean, I told you we had some diehard fans, like cultish fans, but not in large numbers. The people who loved us were people that had like purple hair and spotted, tattoos and like leather. I mean, and they smoked clove cigarettes every gig. I would know that our fan base would be there the minute I smelled the clove cigarettes. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do.
Do you remember cloves?
I do.
I mean, I'm just like, okay, they're here. The Adam for Pieces. But I mean, we never got like a expansive following of any kind. I mean, that's why I just think Florida was not the place for us,
And I could see that though with some of the fans, because the sound of the band, it had different influences, and in the way that everything kind of came to the way the album sounded, I'm sure live it even sounded even more raw, I would imagine. So it had this punk element to it, but also this alternative rock, even though that wasn't even really even a term back then. It kind of had that sound, thinking back to other bands of that time. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that that's who some of the people that were coming out.
Yeah.
With some of those shows. So
when I think about my influences were, I told you, David Bowie, Joni Mitchell, Steely Dan, the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and to an extent later, Velvet Underground. Nancy's main influence, the band Heart. I mean, that's it. Heart. Tom's influences, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Jimi Hendrix. Chip's influences, Gang of Four, Sex Pistols, Ramones, Joy Division, Psychedelic Furs.
Makes sense. When you listen to that album, I mean, you definitely, my opinion, I think you can sometimes hear more of Chip's influences in the music, but you also hear a lot of other different sounds and influences too. So, but that's what I love about it. And I hope everyone who's checking out the interview does take a little bit of time to check out the album, the Atoms for Peace, the only record the band ever put out. So there's not a whole lot of discography you got to go digging around for. Find the one album. The link will be in the description. You can stream it on YouTube. But if you are ever at a local record shop, you might come across it, and it's worth picking up. And I think also the value I've seen has gone up a little bit too. It's not. I found maybe before it was you could find it more often, but I haven't come across a copy in quite some time. So there might be less and less out there. So, but it's worth picking up. It's a really good record. And Audrey, you were a huge part of that. And again, super glad that you have taken the time to share the story of Atoms for Peace and also about your life too, and all the things that you've done. It's been so wonderful getting a chance to chat with you today. And as we kind of close things out, I'd love to kind of give you the last word. So I'm going to turn things over to you to share any closing remarks. Audrey, again, thanks again for being a wonderful guest.
Thanks, Jeff. I think that I really owe a debt of gratitude to you for doing this. I admire you and your dedication to music and Florida music itself. I'm in great hopes that you can possibly bring people together and maybe and who haven't talked to each other for a little while, and maybe bring some people to be reunited. Atoms for Peace, I think, was a band before its time. I really honor the bandmates that are still alive, Nancy Goff and Tom Holtz. I told you I'm in touch with them through Facebook. Not as much as I would like to be, but certainly we are in touch. I honor the memory of Chip. I don't want to get emotional again because I already have, but we miss him, and we probably would have gotten back together if he had been alive. My musical journey Atoms for Peace was a huge part of my musical journey. And the fact that Chip and George were interested even in bringing some women into the band speaks a lot, I think, for them as people. And I really support I do want to say that I support women in music, and I think that a lot of women my age may have kind of missed their chances because of some of the past prejudices that existed that no longer exist quite as much, thank God. But I really hope that in the next few years or to come, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the world of music, because I don't know. I have a big question mark about the direction that music is heading, but I sure do hope that more and more women play instruments and are heard playing instruments rather than just being focused on as the sexy singer. We like playing instruments too, and we can do it too. So those are my last words.